First contact. The command bridge of the Varaxian scout vessel Prey Seeker fell silent as the main view screen displayed a small blue-green planet. High Commander Vexnar, his scaled hide glimmering under the ambient lighting, leaned forward in his command chair, yellowed eyes narrowing, as he studied the third planet of this unremarkable star system. Life signs, he demanded, voice a low rumble that reverberated through the bridge. Science Officer Krell tapped on her console with clawed fingers. Abundant, High Commander. The planet teems with various life forms. And, she paused, mandibles clicking in surprise, there appears to be a dominant species with rudimentary space technology. Vexinar's spines rippled along his back, the Varaxian equivalent of raised eyebrows. Show me. The view screen shifted to display images captured from orbit, sprawling cities, primitive spacecraft moving between the planet and its single moon orbital stations. Then came images of the species themselves, bipedal, soft-skinned creatures with no apparent natural defenses. Humans, Krell provided, according to intercepted transmissions. They call their world Earth. Vexinar's lipless mouth stretched into what passed for a smile among his kind, revealing rows of serrated teeth. Soft prey, he observed. No claws, no armor, not even basic toxin glands. He gestured dismissively. Their technology. Early spacefaring stage, Tactical Officer Mesrock replied. Chemical propulsion for most vehicles, though we've detected hints of more advanced propulsion systems in development. Primitive energy weapons, nuclear capabilities, nothing that could challenge even this scout vessel, let alone the might of the Varaxian Empire. Vexnar nodded, satisfaction evident in the slow swaying of his tail. Perfect. The Empress will be pleased. New territory, new resources, new slaves, all with minimal investment of forces. He rose from his chair, towering over his subordinates. Prepare a complete report for Imperial Command. I want detailed scans of their military capabilities, resource centers, and population distribution. Already underway, High Commander, Krell acknowledged. Excellent. Once complete, set course back to the homeworld. The conquest of Earth will make a fine addition to my record. Dr. Elena Reyes stared at the massive alien vessel on her monitor with a mixture of awe and trepidation. As director of the United Earth Space Agency's First Contact Division, she had trained for this moment her entire career. Humanity's first encounter with extraterrestrial intelligence. The reality, however, was far more intimidating than any simulation. Are they responding to our hails? She asked, not taking her eyes off the screen. Communications Officer Lai shook his head. Nothing. Director, we've tried all frequencies, even attempted mathematical sequences as suggested in the contact protocols. They're receiving our transmissions. We can confirm that much, but they're choosing not to respond. Elena frowned. Keep trying. And what about their activities? Any clue what they're doing up there? They appear to be conducting extensive scans of Earth, reported Dr. Okafor, the senior xenobiologist. Atmospheric composition, geographical features, our infrastructure, particularly detailed around military installations and power plants. That doesn't sound like scientific curiosity, muttered General Hayes, the military liaison to the First Contact Team. The stocky officer had been against the peaceful approach from the beginning. That sounds like reconnaissance. Elena shot him a warning glance. Let's not jump to conclusions. Different species, different protocols. They might consider scanning to be a standard greeting procedure. Or they might be planning an invasion, Hayes countered. We need to prepare for that possibility. Prepare, yes. Provoke, no, Elena said firmly. Humanity has dreamed of this moment for centuries. I won't let fear dictate our first interaction with an alien civilization. Hayes looked like he wanted to argue further, but was interrupted by an urgent alert from Lai's console. Director, the alien vessel is moving. It's leaving orbit. Everyone watched as the strange ship accelerated away from Earth, quickly disappearing from their tracking systems. Were they frightened off? Someone wondered aloud. Elena shook her head slowly. I don't think so. I think they found exactly what they were looking for. She turned to Hayes, her expression grave. General, I hate to say it, but I believe we should discuss defense preparations, just in case. 3 months later, Empress Karkatha of the Varaxian Empire gazed down at the holographic representation of Earth rotating slowly above the strategic planning table. Around her stood her most trusted military advisors, all veterans of countless successful conquest campaigns across the galaxy. Such a peculiar species, she mused, her voice carrying the distinctive harmonic overtones of Varaxian royalty. According to our biological analysis, they should never have risen to dominance on their world. No natural weapons, fragile bodies, slow reproduction rates compared to many species, yet somehow they became the apex life form of their planet. Likely through primitive tool use, Your Eminence, offered Grand Strategist Vordak. Many prey species develop basic technology to compensate for their physical inadequacies. It rarely helps them against superior organisms like ourselves. The Empress nodded, her ceremonial head crest glinting under the chamber's lights. And your assessment of the conquest requirements? Minimal, Your Eminence. A standard subjugation fleet should be more than sufficient. The humans possess nuclear weapons, but their delivery systems are primitive and easily intercepted. Their conventional forces are laughably inadequate against our technology. Vordak manipulated the hologram, highlighting key military installations around the planet. We anticipate complete planetary control within one standard cycle, with acceptable casualty rates. Acceptable casualties. The Empress's head tilted. I was under the impression this would be a routine operation. Fleet Admiral Zexkor stepped forward. Your Eminence, even the weakest prey occasionally gets in a lucky strike. We anticipate losing perhaps a dozen ships and a few thousand warriors. Negligible numbers for such a prize. The Empress considered this, her tail swaying thoughtfully. Very well. Proceed with the operation. I want this Earth added to our territories with minimal damage to its resources. These humans may lack natural defenses, but our intelligence suggests they might possess useful cognitive abilities. Some may prove valuable as specialized slaves. It shall be done, Your Eminence, the assembled officers chorussed, bowing low. As they filed out to prepare the invasion fleet, only Grand Strategist Vordak lingered behind. Something troubles you, Vordak? The Empress inquired. A minor concern, Your Eminence. Our scouts reported something unusual about the humans' historical records. Explain. Unlike most prey species we've encountered, who evolved through evasion and hiding, the humans have a strange history of hunting predators larger than themselves. Using primitive tools and group tactics, they've apparently eliminated numerous apex predators on their world. The Empress dismissed this with a wave of her clawed hand. Primitive behavior from primitive beings. Whatever crude methods they used against beasts on their world will avail them nothing against the technological might of the Varaxian Empire. Her eyes narrowed. Or do you suggest we should fear these soft, clawless creatures? Vordak immediately prostrated himself. Of course not, Your Eminence. Merely an anthropological curiosity. The conquest will proceed as planned. See that it does, the Empress replied. I expect to hear of Earth's surrender within the cycle. Captain Maya Chen of the UES Defender watched the approaching alien fleet with grim determination. 50 massive vessels, each dwarfing humanity's largest spacecraft, had entered the solar system and were methodically eliminating Earth's orbital defenses. Satellite network is down, her tactical officer reported. We've lost 60% of our orbital platforms. The moon base is under heavy bombardment. Maya nodded, unsurprised. When the aliens had first appeared at the edge of the solar system, humanity had hoped for peaceful contact despite the ominous size of their fleet. That hope had been shattered when the aliens' first action was to destroy the diplomatic vessel sent to greet them. What's the status of Operation Hornet's Nest? She asked. Final preparations underway. Stealth transports are in position, just awaiting your command, Captain. Maya took a deep breath. The plan was audacious, perhaps even foolhardy, but it was the best chance humanity had against an enemy with such overwhelming technological superiority. Send the signal. All units commence Operation Hornet's Nest. She turned to her communications officer. And get me a direct channel to the lead enemy vessel. It's time we introduced ourselves properly. As the officer worked to establish the connection, Maya gazed at the enemy armada. The aliens clearly expected an easy victory, a routine conquest of what they perceived as a primitive, defenseless species. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. "Channel open, Captain," the communications officer announced. Maya straightened her uniform and faced the camera. "This is Captain Maya Chen of the United Earth Space Force. To the commander of the alien fleet, you have entered Earth space without permission and engaged in hostile actions against our people. We demand your immediate withdrawal." The screen flickered, then displayed an alien bridge. At its center stood a tall reptilian creature with iridescent scales and predatory eyes. When it spoke, the translation software struggled to keep up with the complex harmonics of its language. "I am Fleet Admiral Zexkor of the Varaxian Empire. Your demand is noted and rejected. Your species has been selected for conquest and integration into our dominion. Surrender now, and you may serve as privileged slaves. Resist, and we will make examples of your population centers." Maya managed to keep her expression neutral despite her revulsion. "The people of Earth do not surrender to bullies, Admiral Zexkor, no matter how big or how alien. We have a saying on our world: don't poke the bear. It means don't provoke something that can hurt you badly." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "You compare yourselves to predators. How amusing. Your species barely qualifies as prey." Maya allowed herself a small smile. "You misunderstand, Admiral. We're not the bear in this scenario." Her finger hovered over a button on her console. "We're the ones crazy enough to poke it." She cut the transmission and pressed the button. Across the solar system, hundreds of previously undetected stealth craft suddenly activated, streaking toward the Varaxian vessels. Earth's remaining military platforms opened fire, not at the enemy ships, but into seemingly empty space, creating a debris field that forced the Varaxian fleet to adjust their formation. Operation Hornet's Nest had begun. As her ship moved to join the fray, Maya thought about humanity's long history of facing overwhelming odds. The Varaxians had evolved as apex predators, conquering through natural superiority. But humans had evolved by outsmarting predators, by turning disadvantages into strengths, by cooperating when individually weak. "They think we're prey," she murmured. "Let's show them what happens when you corner a supposedly helpless animal." The battle for Earth had begun, and the galaxy's most feared predators were about to learn a harsh lesson about their supposedly easy conquest. Unexpected resistance. Fleet Admiral Zexkor watched with growing irritation as another of his destroyer-class vessels reported critical systems failure. That made 7 ships disabled in the first hour of what should have been a routine planetary subjugation. His tail lashed violently, causing nearby officers to give him a wide berth. "Explain this," he demanded of his tactical staff. "How are these primitives causing such damage?" Tactical Coordinator Vrislak looked distinctly uncomfortable, his scales dulling with distress. "The humans are not attacking as expected, Admiral. Rather than engaging our ships directly with their inferior weapons, they've deployed boarding parties." Boarding parties. Zexkor's spines flared in disbelief. In space combat, that's ancient pre-space warfare methodology. Nevertheless, it appears effective, Vrislak admitted. Their small craft evaded our targeting systems, attached to our hulls, and deployed infantry directly into our ships. Once inside, they're utilizing knowledge of our vessel layouts gained from their initial boarding successes to target critical systems. Zexkor's anger turned to bewilderment. "Our ship designs are classified. How could they possibly?" "They captured intact data cores from the first 2 vessels they disabled, Vrislak explained. Our intelligence suggests they're analyzing the information in real time and distributing tactical data to their forces. Impossible. Zexkor slammed a clawed fist on his command console. No species learns that quickly. Senior biologist Tezra, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. Perhaps we've underestimated these humans, Admiral. Our preliminary biological assessment classified them as physically inferior prey species, but failed to account for their neural plasticity and problem-solving capabilities. Meaning? Zexkor growled. Meaning they adapt faster than any species we've previously encountered. They're learning our weaknesses, our tactics, our technology, and counter-adapting almost immediately. A proximity alarm suddenly blared across the bridge. On the tactical display, dozens of small human craft had broken through the fleet's perimeter and were approaching the flagship itself. All defense systems to maximum, Zexkor ordered. No human sets foot on this vessel. Too late, came a voice from behind him. Zexkor whirled to find a squad of humans in sleek combat suits emerging from a maintenance shaft. Each carried weapons that looked hastily modified, but the modifications included Voraxian technology components. The lead human, a female judging by size and shape, aimed directly at Zexkor. Fleet Admiral, I suggest you order your forces to stand down. Zexkor's natural combat instincts took over. With a primal roar, he launched himself at what his ancestors would have considered easy prey. His powerful legs propelled him across the bridge, claws extended for the kill. The human didn't flinch. Instead, she triggered her weapon, not at Zexkor, but at the deck beneath him. A strange gel-like substance erupted, instantly hardening around the Admiral's legs, halting his charge mid-leap, and sending him crashing awkwardly to the floor. We studied your biology, the human explained calmly, approaching the immobilized commander. Your muscles are impressively strong, but they require solid purchase to generate force. Simple solution. Deny you that purchase. As other humans secured the bridge crew with similar efficiency, Zexkor felt something he'd never experienced before, the cold, sinking feeling that prey must experience when trapped by a superior predator. Who are you? He managed to ask. Major Sofia Rodriguez, Earth Special Forces. She knelt to look him in the eye. And you should know, Admiral, humans have been hunting things bigger and stronger than ourselves since before we built cities. Did your intelligence reports mention that? In the emergency command bunker beneath Geneva, the United Earth Defense Council watched the battle unfold on massive screens. General Hayes could barely contain his excitement as another red icon, representing a Voraxian vessel turned yellow, indicating capture rather than destruction. It's working, he exclaimed. Operation Hornet's Nest is actually working. Dr. Elinga Reyes nodded, though her expression remained tense. Phase 1 is working, she corrected. We've surprised them, yes, but they have hundreds more ships that could be called in. We need to press our advantage while they're still reeling. Council Chairwoman Amara Okonkwo raised a hand for attention. Dr. Amir, your assessment of the captured alien technology. Dr. Farid Amir, director of the hastily formed Xenotechnology Division, stepped forward. It's remarkable how quickly we're adapting it, Madam Chairwoman. The Voraxian technological base isn't fundamentally different from ours in concept, just far more advanced in execution. Our engineers and scientists are reverse engineering critical components as we speak. Their communications encryption was particularly vulnerable, added Intelligence Director Yamamoto. They never expected anyone to capture their systems intact, so their internal security is surprisingly weak. We're extracting their tactical databases, star charts, and most importantly, detailed information on their empire's structure. And what have we learned? Okonkwo pressed. Yamamoto's expression was grim but determined. The Voraxians control over 300 star systems and have subjugated dozens of other species. They're essentially the apex predators of this sector of the galaxy, having evolved from pack hunters on a high-gravity, high-oxygen world. Their physical capabilities are formidable, strength, speed, natural weapons, but their true advantage has always been technological superiority. Until now, none of their conquered species had the capacity to capture and reverse engineer their technology. So we're the first to put up a real fight, Hayes mused. The first to have both the opportunity and the capability, Yamamoto corrected. Some species had better technology, but lacked our tactical flexibility. Others might have had the creativity, but lacked our technical foundation. Elena leaned forward. And what about these other subjugated species? Can we contact them? Form alliances. Working on it, Yamamoto replied. The Varaxian databases contain communication protocols for their entire empire. If we can secure our position here, we might be able to spark something bigger. Okonkwo nodded thoughtfully, then addressed the entire council. Let's focus on one battle at a time. What's the status of our ground defenses? The Varaxians will surely attempt a planetary invasion once they recover from our initial counterattack. General Hayes brought up a global tactical display. We've distributed the anti-Varaxian measures as widely as possible. The biological countermeasures Dr. Rice's team developed are particularly promising. Non-lethal disorientation agents keyed to their sensory systems. He allowed himself a small smile. Turns out their enhanced predatory senses are actually a vulnerability if you know how to overload them. And civilian evacuations? Okonkwo asked. Proceeding according to plan, confirmed the Civil Defense Director. Major population centers are being dispersed to hardened shelters. The public is responding with remarkable calm because they've been preparing for this day for generations, Elena observed. Science fiction prepared humanity psychologically for extraterrestrial contact, including hostile contact. We've been gaming this scenario in our collective imagination for centuries. A communication officer interrupted with an urgent report. Madam Chairwoman, we're receiving a transmission from Major Rodriguez aboard the captured Varaxian flagship. All eyes turned to the main screen as Sofia Rodriguez's face appeared. Behind her, the alien bridge was now clearly under human control. Defense Council, I'm pleased to report that Operation Hornet's Nest has succeeded beyond expectations. 17 enemy vessels have been captured intact, including their flagship. Fleet Admiral Zexkor is in custody. Her expression turned serious. However, we've intercepted communications indicating that the Varaxian Empress has been informed of the situation. She's deploying their elite guard fleet, 50 more ships, their best warriors. Okonkwo's face remained composed, though concern flickered in her eyes. Your recommendation, Major. We've captured enough of their technology to give us a fighting chance, Madam Chairwoman. But we need time to fully integrate it with our systems. Rodriguez glanced at something off-screen. There's something else. According to the ship's database, the Varaxians have a colony world just 6 light-years from Earth. If we can capture it, we'll have a forward base and access to resources they've already developed. General Hayes whistled. Bold move. Rodriguez. With respect, General, bold moves are all we have right now. The elite guard will arrive in approximately 3 Earth weeks. If we wait here defensively, we'll be overwhelmed. But if we secure the colony and continue adapting their technology, you're suggesting we take the fight to them, Okonkwo realized. Rodriguez nodded firmly. Exactly, Madam Chairwoman. The Varaxians expect prey to hide, to defend, to react. They don't expect prey to hunt the hunter. There was a moment of silence as the council absorbed this audacious proposal. It's risky, Hayes finally said, but tactically sound. The Varaxians clearly don't understand human warfare doctrine. He turned to the other council members. Throughout our history, when faced with a superior force, humans have often opted for aggressive action rather than passive defense. From ancient guerrilla tactics to modern special operations, we've developed entire schools of military thought around combating superior enemies. Okonkwo looked to each council member, gauging their reactions, then back to Rodriguez's determined face on the screen. Very well, Major. Prepare your captured vessels and volunteer crews. You have authorization to proceed to the Varaxian colony world. Your primary objectives: secure the colony, rescue any enslaved species, and establish a forward operating base. And if we encounter Varaxian civilians? Rodriguez asked. The same protocols we established here apply. Elena interjected firmly. We're fighting for survival, not vengeance. Non-combatants are to be treated humanely, regardless of species. Rodriguez nodded. Understood. We'll depart within 12 hours. As the transmission ended, Okonkwo surveyed the determination on the faces around her. Humanity has spent its evolutionary history being the clever underdog, she observed. Perhaps that's exactly the experience we needed for this moment. Empress Karkatha received the news of her fleet's defeat with deadly calm, a reaction far more terrifying to the messenger than any outburst of rage would have been. Let me understand this correctly, she said, her voice dangerously soft. Admiral Zexkor's entire subjugation fleet has been captured or destroyed by a pre-FTL species using boarding tactics. The intelligence officer trembled visibly. Ah yes, Your Eminence. The humans demonstrated unexpected capabilities. They somehow managed to evade our targeting systems and Admiral Zexkor himself. The Empress interrupted. Captured, Your Eminence. The humans now have access to his command codes and tactical information. The Empress's tail lashed once, the only outward sign of her fury. And now these humans are advancing toward our colony in the Terrace system with ships they've captured from us. It wasn't a question, but the officer nodded anyway. Intelligence suggests they're rapidly adapting our technology to their purposes. They've already modified the weapons systems on the captured vessels. The Empress rose from her throne, causing everyone in the chamber to bow lower. She paced slowly, claws clicking on the polished floor. In all our history, no prey species has ever turned the hunt back upon us. These humans, she paused, considering. Grand Strategist Vordak had concerns about them. I should have listened more carefully. She turned abruptly to her elite guard commander. Dispatch the entire elite guard fleet to intercept these humans before they reach Terrace. No tactics are forbidden. I want these creatures exterminated. Their planet can be harvested for resources instead of managed for labor. The commander saluted, claws crossed over his armored chest. It shall be done, Your Eminence. As her court dispersed to carry out her orders, the Empress returned to her throne, seething with an emotion unfamiliar to her and her ancestors. Uncertainty. The Varaxian Empire had expanded unstoppably for millennia across the stars. Their biological superiority combined with their technological advancement had made conquest after conquest inevitable. Until now. Computer, she commanded, display all available information on human history and warfare tactics. Perhaps it was time the apex predators of the galaxy learned something about this unusual prey that fought back. The counter-strategy. Professor Jin Wei Zhao had never expected to be working in a military installation. As one of Earth's foremost xenobiologists, he had spent his career studying life forms across Earth's extremes, hoping to develop insights about potential extraterrestrial biology. Now that theoretical work had become urgently practical as he stood in a high-security laboratory examining Varaxian biological samples. Fascinating, he murmured, adjusting the holographic display of a Varaxian neural scan. Their sensory processing is incredibly sophisticated, especially for movement and scent detection, but remarkably rigid in its pathways. Major Elena Reyes, now serving as liaison between the scientific community and military operations, leaned closer. Meaning? Meaning they evolved as perfect hunters with highly specialized senses, Zhao explained. Their brains process sensory input along fixed neural pathways optimized for detecting prey. Efficient, but inflexible. And that helps us how? Elena pressed. Zhao manipulated the display, highlighting specific regions of the Varaxian brain. We've already developed compounds that overwhelm their sensory systems. But this, he pointed to a particular neural cluster, this is potentially more valuable. It's their threat assessment center. Elena frowned. Like our amygdala. Similar concept, different structure. In humans, our threat response is complex and contextual. We can override fear with reason, dampening our flight response if logic dictates we should stand our ground. The Varaxian brain doesn't work that way. Jaw's eyes gleamed with excitement. Their threat assessment is binary and hierarchical. They immediately categorize everything as threat or non-threat, with a clear hierarchy of threat levels. And at the top of that hierarchy, that's the fascinating part, their greatest fear response is triggered by something they call the superior predator. Essentially, anything their instincts recognize as higher on the food chain than themselves. Elena began to understand. But the Varaxians have been apex predators for so long that nothing triggers that response anymore. Precisely, Zhao exclaimed. Their entire society, their expansion through the galaxy. It's all predicated on their biological certainty that they are always the hunter, never the hunted. So if we could somehow trigger the deeply buried fear response, Zhao nodded vigorously, we could potentially disrupt their entire command structure. Their discipline, their tactics. Everything is built on the assumption of predatory superiority. Take that away. Helena was already reaching for her communicator. We need to get this information to the strike team heading for the Terrace colony immediately. And I want every available neurochemist working with you on developing a delivery system. Zhao hesitated. Major, I should note the ethical considerations. What we're discussing is essentially fear weaponization, psychological warfare at its most fundamental level. Helena's expression sobered. Noted, Professor. And under normal circumstances, I'd agree it's problematic. But we're fighting for our species' survival against an enemy that considers us nothing more than cattle. Sometimes the predator needs to become prey. Captain Darius Jackson stood on the bridge of the newly renamed HSS Defiance, formerly a Varaxian destroyer, and marveled at how quickly his crew had adapted to alien technology. Just 2 weeks ago, they'd been Earth naval officers operating seafaring vessels. Now they were piloting a captured alien spacecraft toward an enemy colony. Status report, he ordered, still getting used to the command chair designed for a much larger tail-bearing species. His XO, Commander Lakshmi Patel, consulted her modified interface. All systems operational, Captain. The engineering team has successfully integrated our AI processing systems with the Varaxian computers. We're actually running more efficiently than they did. Explain, Jackson requested. Patel gestured to the engineering readouts. The Varaxians build remarkable technology, but they use it, predictably. Their combat systems are designed for overwhelming force against weaker opponents. There's redundancy, but little creativity in the implementation. Their evolution as apex predators, Jackson mused. They've never needed to be clever, just powerful. Exactly, sir. Our engineers have reconfigured their systems with human combat doctrine in mind. More flexibility, better defensive capabilities, and significantly improved stealth functions. Jackson nodded, pleased. The human strike force, 7 captured Varaxian vessels crewed by volunteers, had been training intensively since departure from Earth. The plan was audacious. Reach the Varaxian colony world Terrace, liberate any enslaved species, secure the planet's resources, and establish a forward base before the elite guard arrived. Time to Terrace system, he asked. 3 hours, sir. We'll drop out of FTL behind their largest moon, which should mask our approach temporarily, and our intelligence on the colony's defenses. Patel brought up a tactical display. According to the data extracted from Admiral Zexcor's ship, Terrace is a relatively new colony world with minimal military presence, 1 orbital defense platform, and a small garrison of ground troops. The population is primarily scientists, engineers, and administrators, along with several thousand enslaved workers from various conquered species. The Varaxians wouldn't expect an attack on one of their colonies, Jackson reasoned, especially not from prey species using their own ships. No, sir. Their psychology doesn't allow for that possibility. Their tactical doctrine contains detailed protocols for suppressing slave rebellions, but nothing about external liberation forces. A communication officer interrupted. "Captain, priority message from Earth Command." "Put it through," Jackson ordered. Dr. Elena Rice's face appeared on screen. "Captain Jackson, we have critical new intelligence regarding Voraxian biology and psychology. Professor Zhao has identified a potential vulnerability we're calling the superior predator response." She quickly briefed him on Zhao's discoveries about the Voraxian threat assessment system and the neurological response they hope to trigger. "We're transmitting technical specifications for a modified fear pheromone compound," she concluded. "Your science team should be able to synthesize it using equipment in the Voraxian medical bay. Deploy it as you see fit, but be aware, this isn't just about incapacitating individual Voraxians. If we can trigger this response broadly enough, it may fundamentally change how they perceive humans." Jackson absorbed this information, the tactical implications immediately apparent. "Thank you, Doctor. We'll make good use of this." After the transmission ended, he turned to Patel. "Have Dr. Keller meet me in the medical bay immediately. We need to get this pheromone compound into production before we reach Terrace." "Yes, sir." Patel hesitated. "Sir, if I may, we're essentially planning to make an entire species terrified of us. Are we comfortable with that?" Jackson's expression was somber. "Commander, the Voraxians have built their entire empire on making other species terrified of them. Sometimes you have to speak in a language your opponent understands." He stood. "Besides, we're not planning genocide, just teaching some bullies that humans aren't as helpless as they look." The liberation of Terrace colony proceeded with a precision that would have impressed even the most seasoned Voraxian military strategist, had any survived to witness it. The human strike force dropped out of FTL behind Terrace's largest moon exactly as planned. While the bulk of the fleet remained concealed, Captain Jackson's Defiance altered its transponder to mimic a routine supply vessel. The colony's orbital defense platform queried them once, accepted their stolen authentication codes, and returned to its automated scanning patterns. The Defiance docked at the main colonial port, and a strike team disembarked wearing modified Voraxian environmental suits, necessary both for disguise and because Terrace's atmosphere had been terraformed to Voraxian standards, too high in oxygen for human comfort. Inside the environmental suits, each team member carried specially designed aerosol dispensers containing Professor Zhao's synthesized pheromone compound. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chen led the infiltration team through the Colonial Administrative Center, moving with purpose. To any observing Voraxians, they appeared to be a routine security detail. The Voraxians' hierarchical society rarely questioned the presence of uniformed personnel. "Central environmental control is 2 levels down," Chen reported quietly over the secure comm channel. "Minimal resistance encountered. Proceed according to plan," Jackson's voice replied from the Defiance. "The rest of the fleet is moving into position." The team reached environmental control without incident, exactly as anticipated. The Voraxians' confidence in their dominance had led to remarkably lax internal security. Why guard against threats when no threats exist? Chen's team secured the room, subduing the 2 Voraxian technicians with targeted stun weapons specifically calibrated to their nervous systems. "Beginning system override," reported technical specialist Yusuf. Her fingers flew across the alien interface, now familiar after weeks of intensive training. "I've gained access to the atmospheric regulation system, ready to introduce the compound." Chen gave the order. "Initiate Operation Predator Flip." Throughout the colony, in atmospheric processors, ventilation systems, and environmental regulators, the carefully engineered pheromone compound began to disperse. Odorless and colorless to humans, it carried molecular signatures that would interact specifically with Voraxian olfactory receptors and neurological pathways. On the colony's streets, the first Voraxians began to react. A security officer stopped mid-stride, nostrils flaring, pupils dilating. Deep in his brain, neural pathways that had lain dormant throughout his species' evolutionary dominance suddenly fired to life. Ancient instincts, buried beneath millennia of apex predator confidence, erupted into consciousness. For the first time in his life, the Varaxian felt prey fear. It spread like a neural wildfire through the colony. Varaxians froze in confusion, their bodies reacting to a threat their conscious minds couldn't identify. Some began to retreat to defensive positions, others broke into panic-driven runs. "It's working," Chen reported, observing the chaos through security feeds. Moving to Phase 2. As the Varaxian administrative and security infrastructure collapsed into confusion, the remainder of the human fleet descended on the colony, not to attack, but to liberate. The enslaved species, Tellarites with their crystalline skin, methane-breathing Dovan engineers, the insectoid Xerix, watched in astonishment as their Varaxian masters fell into disarray. When human teams in distinctive Earth Defense Force uniforms began moving through the slave quarters, not attacking but unlocking restraints and deactivating control implants, the confusion turned to cautious hope. Paradigm shift. 1 year after the Battle of Seoul, the Galactic Alliance Summit convened in a newly constructed space station orbiting a neutral star system. Representatives from 27 species, former Varaxian subjects, independent civilizations drawn by the unprecedented events, and the Varaxians themselves, gathered to formalize the new interstellar political reality. The Grand Assembly Hall had been designed to accommodate the physical needs of all attendees: atmospheric composition adjustable by section, gravity generators calibrated to various homeworld standards, and translation systems handling over 40 distinct languages and communication methods. Dr. Elena Reyes, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Alliance, stood at the diplomatic reception, observing the remarkable tableau before her. Tellarite crystal forms conversed with methane-breathing Dovans, insectoid Xerix clustered near aquatic Melnarians, and most remarkably, Varaxian diplomats engaged in seemingly earnest discussion with species they had, until recently, considered resource assets rather than people. "Quite the achievement," remarked a familiar voice. Elena turned to find Captain Darius Jackson, newly promoted to Admiral, joining her. "The first month I wasn't sure we'd reach this day," she admitted, "especially after the Varaxian hardliner coup attempt." Jackson nodded grimly, remembering the tense weeks when Empress Tarkotha had faced a violent challenge from military leaders opposed to negotiation. The rebellion had ultimately failed, but it had demonstrated how difficult the transition would be for a species whose entire identity was built on predatory dominance. "Sarkotha showed remarkable adaptation," he observed. "Not many leaders would survive such a fundamental challenge to their species' self-conception." "Evolution favors those who adapt," Elena replied. "Even apex predators." They watched as Empress Tarkotha herself entered the reception, accompanied by human and Tellarite dignitaries. The Empress had embraced the diplomatic process with unexpected fervor, positioning herself as a visionary leading her people into a new evolutionary phase. Whether from genuine conviction or political calculus remained unclear, but the results were undeniable. "Still, trust builds slowly," Jackson murmured, noting the subtle defensive postures of formerly enslaved species as the Varaxian delegation passed. "It's only been a year," Elena reminded him. "After millennia of domination, that's nothing." She gestured toward a group of scientists from multiple species engaged in animated discussion. "But look there, real collaboration happening. The Varaxian biotechnology experts working with Dovan engineers and human physicists. Progress isn't just about politics." Jackson agreed. The technological exchange that had begun as a desperate wartime alliance had blossomed into something unprecedented. The Dovan's genius for energy systems, combined with Varaxian biotechnology and human innovation, had already produced breakthroughs that benefited all participating species. Ambassador Reyes, a melodious voice interrupted. They turned to find Grand Strategist Vordak, now serving as the Varaxian diplomatic coordinator. Elena had come to respect Vordak during the negotiations. Unlike many Varaxians, he had recognized the threat humans posed from the beginning and had adapted quickly to the new reality. Grand strategist, she greeted him warmly. I was just telling Admiral Jackson how impressed I am with the progress of the scientific exchange program. Vordak's head crest lifted slightly, a sign of pride in Voraxian body language. My people are discovering that there are evolutionary advantages to cooperation we had never considered. Predators who hunt alone are limited by their individual strength. Predators who hunt in coordination with diverse allies can achieve far more. Elena noted his continued use of predator terminology, but didn't comment on it. Cultural evolution took time. The Empress wishes to speak with you before the formal proceedings, Vordak continued. If you would accompany me. Elena exchanged a glance with Jackson before following the Voraxian through the reception hall. They entered a private diplomatic suite where Empress Karkatha waited, attended only by a single guard. Ambassador Reyes, the Empress acknowledged her entrance. Thank you for coming. Elena had met with Karkatha numerous times during the negotiations, but still found herself struck by the Voraxian ruler's imposing presence. Nearly 3 meters tall, with iridescent scales, and the most elaborate head crest of her species, she was the product of generations of selective breeding for predatory perfection. Your Eminence, Elena replied with the proper Voraxian honorific. How may I assist you? The Empress dismissed her attendants with a gesture, waiting until she was alone with Elena before speaking again. Today we signed the Galactic Alliance Charter, she stated. A document that fundamentally redefines the relationship between our peoples and establishes new principles for interstellar relations. Indeed, Your Eminence, a historic achievement for all involved. One that would not exist if you had chosen extermination rather than negotiation when you held the advantage. The Empress's yellow eyes studied Elena intently. I have wondered, many times, why humans showed restraint. When cornered, most prey species either surrender or flee. When victorious, most predator species destroy their rivals. Humans did neither. Elena considered her response carefully. Humanity's history is complex. Your Eminence, we've been both predator and prey at various points in our development. We've experienced the consequences of both domination and cooperation. We chose the path that promised the best long-term outcomes for everyone, including the Voraxians. A remarkably evolved perspective. Karkatha observed. My scientists have been studying your species intensively. They tell me that humans evolved not through superior physical attributes, but through social cooperation and technological adaptation. That's essentially correct. Our ancestors were relatively weak as individuals, but exceptionally strong as groups. The Empress moved to a viewport, gazing out at the assembled ships of the various delegations. For millennia, the Voraxian Empire expanded through the stars, conquering all we encountered. We believe this was the natural order, the strong dominate the weak. Yet in a single year, that certainty has been challenged. She turned back to Elena. Some among my people still resist this change. They believe we should rearm, rebuild our forces, and return to the old ways once this moment of weakness passes. They call the treaty we signed today an aberration, a temporary setback in the natural predator-prey relationship. And what do you believe, Your Eminence? Elena asked quietly. The Empress's head crest rippled in a complex pattern. I believe in survival, Ambassador. And after careful study, I have concluded that the human model of cooperation rather than domination offers better survival prospects in a changing galaxy. She paused. Though I admit, the transition is uncomfortable for many of my people. Evolution often is, Elena replied. But your leadership through this process has been crucial. The fact that we stand here today, preparing to sign this charter rather than continuing a devastating war, is testament to your vision. It was diplomatic flattery, but with a genuine core of truth. Karkatha could have chosen continued conflict, even knowing it might eventually lead to defeat. Instead, she had embraced the painful process of cultural transformation. There is another matter, the Empress said, changing subjects. The neurological agent your scientists developed, the one that disrupts our hierarchical instincts. My council has requested assurances that all samples have been destroyed as specified in the preliminary agreements. Elena nodded. All combat-deployed variants have been neutralized according to the verification protocols. The research itself remains, of course, but under the strictest containment provisions outlined in the Charter's biological warfare prohibitions. Good. Trust must be built on actions, not merely words. The Empress moved toward the door, indicating their private discussion was concluding. One last question. Ambassador. A personal curiosity. Of course. Your species, so physically unimpressive by galactic standards. No natural weapons. No environmental protections. Yet you defeated the most powerful empire in known space, and then transformed victory into partnership rather than domination. Her head tilted in genuine curiosity. What is the source of this perspective? How did humans evolve to think this way? Elena smiled slightly. Perhaps precisely because we weren't the strongest, Your Eminence. When you can't rely on fangs or claws or venom, you learn to use your mind. You learn that differences can be strengths when properly combined. You learn that cooperation often achieves what competition cannot. The Empress considered this a fascinating evolutionary path. Perhaps there is something to be learned from prey species after all. She gestured toward the door. Shall we proceed to the ceremony? I believe we have kept the galaxy waiting long enough. The signing of the Galactic Alliance Charter was broadcast across thousands of worlds. Species that had never known anything but Voraxian domination watched in amazement as their former masters symbolically set aside the predator-prey relationship in favor of a new paradigm. The Charter's preamble, composed jointly by representatives of all 27 signatory species, read, "We, the diverse peoples of the galaxy, recognizing that true strength lies not in domination, but in cooperation, not in uniformity, but in diversity, hereby establish this galactic alliance as the foundation of a new era of interstellar relations. No longer shall species be classified as predator or prey, dominant or subservient, but as equal partners in the greater project of civilization." As Elena added her signature to the document, she reflected on the improbable journey that had brought them to this moment. Just over a year ago, humanity had faced extinction at the hands of a vastly, technologically superior foe. Now Earth stood as a founding member of an unprecedented galactic community. After the ceremony, she found herself on an observation deck with Admiral Jackson and Professor Jin Wai Zhao, watching the diplomatic vessels prepare for departure. "Do you think it will last?" Jackson asked quietly. "This alliance. The Voraxians spent thousands of years as conquerors. Can they really change so fundamentally?" Zhao, who had spent the past year studying Voraxian biology and psychology in depth, responded thoughtfully. "Their biology hasn't changed, but their culture is adapting remarkably quickly. The younger generations are particularly receptive to the new paradigm. They're seeing the benefits of collaborative advancement rather than pure dominance." "And the older generations?" Elena prompted. "Struggling, as one would expect. But even they can't deny the technological and scientific benefits of cooperation. The Voraxians were stagnating under their old model, conquering but not innovating. Now they're experiencing a renaissance of sorts." Jackson seemed unconvinced. "They're predators by evolution. That doesn't just disappear because of a treaty. Humans are predators by evolution too, Admiral," Zhao reminded him. "Our ancestors hunted and killed, but we evolved beyond our base instincts. We developed ethics, empathy, cooperation, not because we stopped being what biology made us, but because we chose to be more." Elena added, "The Empress asked me today why humans showed restraint when we had the advantage. I think that's the key difference, not that the Voraxians are predators, and we aren't, but that we've had longer to wrestle with the contradictions of our nature. To realize that just because we can dominate doesn't mean we should." Their conversation was interrupted as Crystallart Venn, the Tellarite elder who had become a key alliance diplomat, joined them. "Forgive the intrusion," Ven said, his crystalline form catching the starlight. "But I wanted to express my people's gratitude before departing. For generations, we existed as tools, as resources to be used. Today, we stood as equals." "You earned that place," Elena assured him. "The Alliance would not exist without the contributions of all member species." "Perhaps," Ven acknowledged. "But it began with humans willing to fight not just for themselves, but for others." His multifaceted eyes seemed to glimmer with emotion. "In our oldest legends, there was a prophecy that someday a species would arise who were neither predator nor prey, but something new, beings who would reshape the stars. For centuries under Varaxian rule, we thought those stories mere fantasy, comfort tales for the oppressed." He gestured toward the charter document, now displayed on screens throughout the station. "Now I wonder if our ancestors somehow knew that one day humans would come." After Ven departed, the three humans stood in thoughtful silence, watching the diverse ships of their new allies preparing to return to their homeworlds, not as conquered subjects, but as equal partners in a galactic community. "Beings who are neither predator nor prey," Joe mused. "An interesting concept." "Maybe that's humanity's role in the galaxy," Elena suggested. "Not the strongest or the fastest or the most advanced, but the ones who could imagine a different way." Jackson, the career military officer who had seen both the worst and best of human nature, nodded slowly. "Throughout our history, we've been good at two things: fighting and making peace." He smiled slightly. "Maybe we needed to show the galaxy we could do the first, to create the opportunity for the second." As the observation deck emptied, Elena turned her gaze from the departing ships to the star-filled backdrop beyond. Somewhere out there, other civilizations continued to evolve, to struggle, to advance. Some might be predators like the Varaxians, others prey like the Tellarites or Dovans. And when they eventually encountered the Galactic Alliance, they would find something new, a community where ancient biological categories no longer determined destiny, where cooperation had proven more powerful than conquest, where former predators and former prey worked together to build something greater than either could achieve alone. All because humans, when faced with a galaxy of predators, had refused to accept the role of prey. Instead, they had become something the galaxy had never seen before, catalysts for evolution itself. The end.